Every financial project, big or small, has a grand expenditure in technical infrastructure, both in terms of resources and funds. And I want to take your attention to blockchain technology because it does solve the problem. Yes, it has become famous by bringing in cryptocurrencies, but the speculation around these has mostly come down. What we have in the nutshell now is the tech itself, and it has matured and is ready for mass adoption. In this following episode, I bring you CTPO of the company who made it possible or contributed highly to making it possible, and we will be covering privacy, security, compliance, scalability, all of the things matter to your projects. So please listen to this. Let's talk first about some misconceptions of financial institutions that they might have about blockchain technology. Have you heard of any, or can you come up with some?
I think like there's a few common ones. I can name a few, like maybe four of them. One is that blockchain is crypto, is what I called. So basically, because there's two different things. There's one is a blockchain technology, and another thing is when you build on top of this different new economical systems with tokens, with whatever. So use it when basically if you want to use blockchain, you don't really have to use crypto. You basically can use blockchain as technology of its own, but yeah, maybe you can use both. Another thing is that basically blockchain has only a speculative value. We'll probably talk later about that, but like in including blockchain in your fintech or banking systems can bring tangible benefits, basically savings and efficiencies. So it's not only a speculation on tokens or NFTs or something that's there. Another thing is that that's a kind of a gray area and illegal, but we kind of see that right now there is more and more legislations coming up, like MiCA in European countries. Then there is a plan of new legislation in the UK that's coming up. There is probably the work group in the US as well that's doing that. So it's I think a lot of eyes were on blockchain and crypto in general. So there is quite a very clear financial or very clear compliance frameworks that are coming up for that. And finally, is that blockchain kind of is inefficiently just burning a lot of electricity, and this usually comes from people only being familiar with Bitcoin. That actually, yes, to mine Bitcoin, you need to run like special hardware that burns a lot of electricity, yada yada yada. But the modern blockchains, like even starting from Ethereum, but especially the newer ones, the newer like layer 2 solutions, they're actually very, very efficient and could be, if used instead of traditional banking systems or like software that run. Not banking system as not replacing banks, but as a software that bank runs, could be much more efficient. That's what they have nowadays.
Given that these misconceptions might have been relevant some time ago or in certain context, but in general adoption of technology, they are not so much anymore. What kind of advancements in the landscape of technology and financials do you see?
Yeah, there's like also, I mean, the fintech landscape changes a little, well, not a little, quite a bit, especially lately, and it's basically I think all related to legislation, new like advancements in legislations, because again, finance sector was always very heavily regulated, but like let's say at some point there were like just banks and there was a banking license that is very very difficult. Then at another point there was like new legislation that allowed to be this kind of, I forgot what it's called, this electronic financial whatever, like like Revolut for instance is like it's a good example. They started not as a bank with a full banking license, but it started as this new thing, and this was only allowed because there's new legislation about that. So then after that there was like a few fintech legislations, let's say in Europe. I'm always blanking on the names of this, but there was this legislation of that the banks require expose certain APIs basically for fintech players to use, and then the fintech players can use it without obtaining a license, but they can use like let's say like some Swedish banks or like I don't know, other European banks to actually transact, but they can build services on top of that. And this all brings a lot of new players basically in ecosystem with some innovative solutions. Again, Revolut is already not small, but again, take 5 years ago, it was something very new and exciting. And then there is more like purely electronic banks, or not. I can call it banks because I don't have banking license, like fintech projects from, again, some loans, some credit cards, payments, and yada yada. And now with new legislation, at least in Europe, you also can have fintech fintech together with the blockchain mixes, like projects like Monerium, Gnosis Pay, or Request Finance and Wirex and others.
I just checked online as well. Revolut in the UK just received in July their banking license, right? Before that.
Yeah, but they've been operating as this pseudo entity for so many years, and that's because it was allowed finally. At some point, banking was so heavy at audits, so they wanted to bring some like lighter entity with less responsibilities and with less kind of abilities. They cannot, let's say, sign you a mortgage, but they can give you a credit card.
That's happening. And you mentioned Gnosis Pay and Wirex. These are the platforms that you help to build, Gateway helped to build them. Can you talk a little bit more about these use cases? What have been done, and what advantages do the systems have? Why did it even appear?
I think it's like basically it's a next step into having like even lighter financial products and with more and more people who can use it. And it's very transparent and also very efficient because, and it's also the way to basically, because both Wirex Pay and Gnosis Pay, it's basically a credit card that's connected directly to your crypto wallet. And that means that there is some, of course, process like of how you need to be KYC'd, the process of how to register, how to receive it. It's a real, I think, MasterCard or like basically it's real Visa and MasterCard cards. I think in both cases they're different. And then it's like a real payment that's getting withdrawn from your crypto wallet in a kind of quote unquote non-custodial way, because what's different between them and let's say Revolut or even like Coinbase releasing a card is that when you transfer money to this wallet, this money are still under your control, so they cannot take them away. Like, because when you transfer money to Revolut, they are basically stored in Revolut, and the keys to the safe or whatever are in Revolut, right? Or encryption keys or whatever. But in case of Wirex Pay and Gnosis Pay, the keys are still with the user, and it's kind of a multi-sig. So multi-sig means like this wallet when basically more efficient, like a kind of a smart wallet, if somebody heard about them. So that brings it kind of a control even more towards the user. And it's again, it's smaller project than to launch Revolut as well, because this organization doesn't keep custody of funds, and also, and again, that's what we'll talk maybe later, but it uses a lot of already built blocks on blockchain instead of trying to start from scratch. So it's like a huge head start. So both, and for Wirex and both Gnosis Pay, we helped Gateway. We helped quite a bit with the infrastructure side. So yeah.
This is a good segue, especially that you mentioned the ownership of the funds to privacy, security, access control, compliance, all of these topics, because they seem to be very relevant for people, and they think like, oh, how can I build on blockchain? It's not going to be private. I'm going to lose access to my funds. They're going to be everywhere. Everybody will see them. Will it even be compliant ever with any sort of regulations? Like, could you explain privacy, how privacy works, for instance, in modern blockchain, or how does this solution ensures this, I would say, bank-grade security, right? Because basically Wirex and Gnosis Pay, they're payment systems, so you have to have a proper protection of funds. So how does that work?
I mean, the easiest thing to tell actually is a compliance. Because since blockchain is very good at naturally at keeping like a kind of a paper trail of stuff, so it basically keeps all the history of funds and all the transactions there, so you can always verify when somebody needs to audit certain transactions. They always see the origin of funds, and always see they cannot disappear, and it's by the rules of the blockchain that are enforced, you cannot just, no money can appear out of nowhere, right? So it cannot be that some tokens appeared out of nothing out of the thin air. So that's
So in fact, this is a massive advancement for financial institutions. Adoption of blockchain will bring them like solve so many problems in terms of compliance.
yeah, because then you know that okay, we're using the blockchain, and let's say yeah, it's very easy to show the origin of funds and whatnot. Regarding the kind of security, it's also a very interesting thing because there's a lot of standards that's not the blockchain but the crypto market. Like as soon as crypto starts having like some values, like again, cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin or Ethereum or whatever else, there is as soon as like basically there was basically a hunt on how to get them from the users, and like a lot of hackers, and since these systems are permissionless and open, like hackers tried every trick in the book to steal them. And that way of course sometimes they succeeded like way in past, but now we're at the kind of at the stage when you look at security in the blockchain systems, the standards of security are like a super high. Like I would say that higher than in some banks that I've seen. Basically, the keys and like addresses are all using like a top-notch encryption schemas and hashing and whatnot. Then of course for smart contracts, there's like they're open source. They have run third-party audits, which is normal, so everybody can look and point on the kind of issues. There are established communication channels for uh, like so-called white hat hackers who can disclose vulnerabilities, and every project has certain bounty programs. Every project has kind of a way to yeah, basically to ask somebody to hack them and get some money.
Let's take an example. So, for instance, as you mentioned, hackers tried every single way to hack the systems, and they had some success in before because they were testing systems, but now it's not possible anymore. But let's assume this, like we're breaking into a payment system of sorts or a digital bank of anything built on blockchain. In the thinking of existing more or less like Web2 infrastructure or financial systems, where do you start to break in, and how is it secured from the Web3 standpoint?
From Web 2, a lot of the things are coming from the, again, there is certain standards as well, like because there are like every financial institution should go certain audits on the security side as well. They go through people training and whatnot. But also it's like a lot of this is about perimeter security, so called. So basically you have the very like you have like a castle with the super thick walls and you need to break into this castle, but then when you are inside, a lot of the things are fairly open, right? Blockchain was born in a kind of area when nobody trusts nobody. Again, because everybody is anonymous, everybody can create bazillion wallets, like hackers are around. And one more thing, by the way, that I forgot about, there is from a lot of the security incidents in the space, in the DeFi space, for instance, everybody learns from them, because there are some. It's like to some extent a little bit less formal, but akin to the aviation, when like every aviation catastrophe is getting like international kind of attention, and then there is like a final report, and everybody there are suggestions there, and sometimes they're introduced worldwide and whatnot. In a bit less formal way, a lot of these things are happening in the blockchain space, because since everything is in the open, as soon as there is certain hack is possible, you know that the hackers will try this trick in particular to everybody because they can, right? That's why that, because people like share the fixes, people share the ways to protect quite a bit. Yeah, but going back to the and that's what's different about the blockchain system. So they were like, you kind of think about them that it's instead of one single perimeter based like I don't know fortress or something, you have this a little bit, I don't know if it's a good example or not, but more like a ship with like different areas and segments that are separated from each other. So even if you break into one, maybe it's less protected than overall perimeter, but if you break into one, it doesn't give you access to anything else and whatnot. So yeah.
Like Fort Boyard, if you won one key in one room, it doesn't mean that you win all the rooms, all the keys. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And then, of course, blockchain is also pushing a lot of the modern um, encryption and verification standards, like state-of-the-art cryptography and security. And yeah, so these are like, for instance, ZK technology, when you verify computation with a proof, and then this proof needs to be verified. Well, essentially, if you're talking Ethereum across like a few 100,000 nodes that are running from with independent entities with different software written by different people, so it's very difficult to make a huge attack on something like that.
Can you give a quick introduction of ZK technology, since you started to mention about proofs, because that is something that helps to secure the whole transaction system, right? And there are different ways you can have optimistic transactions, but for digital banks and for payment systems and for financial institutions, ZK, I know, is recommended. So what's the main idea behind that, in a quick overview?
Well, basically, the idea of, like, again, ZK, it in and of itself is just a field of cryptography when you can generate and verify proof on a certain data without exposing this data. And then turns out that it has a very nice side effect that you can basically verify anything that you're doing with this data, or almost anything, right? That means that you basically can verify any set of actions, or any set of actions. Yes. So basically, when you're running any kind of a ledger, maybe in traditional finance or in blockchain, it's the same story. You have a certain set of rules that you shouldn't break. So again, money shouldn't appear out of nowhere. You shouldn't be able to spend somebody else's money, right? You should only be able to spend as much money as you have, but not more. Yada yada yada. All these rules, right? And again, they're usually enforced by software. And again, they're enforced by software in blockchain as well as the traditional system. What's different in ZK systems is that not only they're enforced by software, but this software needs to generate a proof that is then sent to, let's say, Ethereum, public blockchain. And again, it's a ZK proof, so it's saves on the privacy. But then this proof is sent to Ethereum, and then on Ethereum, it's getting verified that these rules were not broken. Basically, there is a smart contract on Ethereum, technically speaking, and it has all the rules listed. And then when the proof comes, it checks, okay, did Dennis spend his own money? Check, yes. Like, did he spend less or equal than he has? Check. Like, yada yada yada. So all these things, and they're getting verified, let's say, often on a public blockchain. And this public blockchain usually have a high level of security because of what I said before. Like, there's like a lot of people running the nodes. Every node is re-verifying everything. Nobody trusts anybody, and there's like, yeah, in this area. So that's how it more or less works.
So contrary to the belief that blockchain can be used for money laundering, like, it shouldn't be in terms of ZK technology, because you can, like, there's a way to money launder somehow, but it has everything against it, right?
Public blockchain is just purely transparent, so you can see everything that's going on there. So they're very good for auditors, but not very good for people who want to hide anything. And that's speaking of like hiding and basically privacy, because of course, like in real world financial institutions, and again, if you are a customer of a bank, you don't want the whole world to see your account, your balances, how rich or how broke you are. Like you don't need to. It's something very private. That means that privacy is very important, and the blockchain, again, public blockchains are all transparent, and the only protection you have there is that there is no linkage between your name and the wallet. But as soon as there is, like, basically there it's done. Like, there is no privacy anymore for you. So that's why there is other basically things that were invented there. And for instance, one of the things are like very infamous, like system like Tornado Cash. Like, again, they are basically mixers that try to hide certain transactions on a blockchain. Yeah, it's a kind of that was used for all sorts of weird things, to be honest. But yeah, That's one of the just most famous system, just that in privacy. But like a bit more specific things is that basically to do with the blockchain. What banks do right now is just basically hide your ledger, and that's where basically kind of maybe private L2s, private rollups are coming into. When basically you're running your own rollup or you're running your own L2, you don't need to show it to anybody, and you might hide it just as well. And then your security is derived through ZK proofs that are zero knowledge, so you don't really, while deriving the truth from, let's say, Ethereum, you don't hide it, you don't showing the data there. And that's the way how I think a lot of these payment systems are working right now. Just again, you're just hiding the ledger, so you don't see what anybody is doing there. But there are still proofs that are coming into like Ethereum that's verified that nothing weird is going on in this chain.
So it executes the transactions, yet it leaves anything private. Basically, people don't.
Yeah, it's like executing them privately, but then it submits a proof that it executed them correctly.
Let's talk about this cost and efficiency of this technology, because of course it's probably a matter of a separate thorough research, but if we draw a ballpark picture on the cost of Web2 infrastructure versus this Web3 infrastructure, how do you think it might pair against each other?
I can maybe do a couple of comparisons, right? Like, because I cannot say the exact numbers and whatnot, but realistically, right now the banks who are using their tech for doing ledgers and whatnot, they basically build stuff in house. So they have internal teams that support it. So it's very similar how people were building, I don't know, websites in the 90s. When you build a website, you building yourself the full backend, you building yourself the full front end, you're writing everything, you're also a database administrator. And then when your site is bigger, for instance, then you need to have the whole, and then you also run servers, or you like run servers, or maybe you run it like from your garage or something. And then basically to run this as a business, you need basically a team who will run your servers, who will then run your backend, who will then run your front end. And then let's say, first of all, appeared the different kind of web frameworks, so you don't really need to, I don't know, deploy yourself. And when you see, for instance, WordPress is like still, there are so many websites still right now that are running on the WordPress and managed instance that nobody owns right now, just because it's very economical. Nobody wants to run and do like I don't know, all the security training, all the disaster recovery, when somebody can do that for you. And that's the power of standardization. And the same thing happened with the servers, because people stopped creating like the farms of servers locally, and then they just basically outsourced it to a few big companies like Amazon, Google, like Microsoft, and some others with AWS and whatnot. And again, at each cost and at each phase of at each transition like that, basically efficiency went up and cost went down because of basically standardization and kind of an outsourcing of that. So blockchain does the same for finances. Before that, everybody built their own ledger with their own rules and whatnot. And then when you hire people, they have a team that supports this ledger, that monitors this ledger, yada yada yada. But then when you need to hire a person, you need to basically teach them how your particular ledger works, how your integration with Swift works, for instance, how your particular integration with MasterCard works, yada yada yada. But with blockchain, it's basically standardized it towards a certain just ecosystem, just a few ecosystems, and also brings the building blocks there already. So if there's, for instance, at Gateway for some payments, we have the code that helps to work with, let's say, Visa or MasterCard transactions, with all this protocol, with like blocking money, with reconciling, with things like that. And of course, it's just much cheaper to run this because you need less people to run this thing, because it's vastly, maybe you even can outsource to run some of this infrastructure. Maybe in the bank you won't, but like maybe in more like a fintech solution you can outsource completely, so you don't have a team that monitors it, and you just outsource it to a company like Gateway who will monitor it and just take a fee, the same way how you outsource your servers to AWS. And then the second thing is that just to use more standard components, it's much easier to hire people who know, like it's much easier to find like a Solidity developer than, let's say, I remember some financial institution in the UK, I don't know which one, was like the whole code was in Haskell just because they wanted to, like, and stuff like this. And then they had a really hard time hiring people, and then they had to pay like crazy high salaries just because they need Haskell developers because their backend is in Haskell, their ledger is in Haskell. But it's much easier to find a developer who understands, let's say, Solidity, uh, or maybe others like Solana virtual machine or something, and just much more knowledge base, because your knowledge base, it's like basically your efficiency is that you're using something public and open source. Like now everybody is using Linux as a backend because again it's public, it's open source, it's every Android phone has it as a kernel, right? And even Apple's is like Unix, but it's very similar way. But just because there's open docs, there's body of knowledge, so there is huge savings on the teams. And also new blockchain solutions are very efficient in terms of transaction processing. So you can basically process transactions for kind of a. We have customers who have like over a million users, and they transacting quite a bit, and still their infra costs are very reasonable. So it's not like hundreds of thousands of dollars or anything. And I
So it's at least on par with what Web 2 financial institutions might like.
I think it's cheaper.
You think it's cheaper even, yeah.
I think it's cheaper, and because I can imagine, let's say I live in Basel, there is like a canton of Basel, it's like 200,000 people. If each of them makes like 5 transactions a day, which is a stretch anyway, right? 5 transactions a day for 200,000 people, basically it's like a million transactions a day. Million transactions a day is just 10 transactions per second, you would take. And this is nothing in the modern blockchain space. You can run very efficiently a system like that.
A concern or maybe even fear at times that these institutions might have is like, hey, how do we not own this? And there are two ways, of course. In some rare cases, it can be done on-prem and everything, but how do you break this pattern of mentality that all the data and assets, they are secure? They don't necessarily need to have, as you said, everything in teams on premise and with special infrastructure allocated. You partly answered on that, but let's unfold this a little bit.
It just depends on what you're building. Like if you're a bank, like a full-fledged bank, most likely you want to still have it on premises. You still want to have your own team. It's just like you will have much easier time to finding this team. Like that will be able to support this thing. If you're more like a fintech, like basically a lighter weight player, then of course you might outsource it because you can, and you work for efficiency and stuff like this. And just like maybe it was scary at first for companies, and still like in 2024 still some companies like just starting to use clouds, right? So okay, we'll just try Azure or AWS or something. The same way, I think basically companies will slowly change their mind and switch towards, because you see that your competitors who will switch to this kind of more subscription model, they will just will be faster and and more efficient, and will basically outrun you.
And what's involved in technical transition to this type of technology? If I already have an established institution, it operates on certain technologies, I want to use Web3. How do I begin? And what do I do?
Good question. First thing is probably you need to find some experts to to help you with this transition, because it's not an obvious one. And basically you need a partner there, like a trusted partner, like to start with. Again, if you're smaller like a company, then you can play it yourself, and again reach out to somebody like Gateway or some others who can provision a network for you and try to see if you can bring customers that way. And if you are like a big bank, I think it's more of a partnership in terms of that you need more like a partnership. Again, that's also what Gateway can help with, is but more on the kind of strategic consulting, if you want. So basically the change needs to happen inside, but somebody needs to help guiding this change. Again, the same way like cloud transformation is going on. I think it's basically the same playbook. For smaller players and more agile players, you go directly to AWS in terms of the cloud, or Gateway, for instance, in terms of the blockchain. If you are if you're a big institution, then you kind of get into this more like a consulting relationship and do it inside this transformation.
And these partners, what kind of support can they provide on this journey and throughout?
Yeah, basically, like let's say we know a lot about the blockchain, like inside out. We know the features that can be implemented there, how to efficiently implement them, how to run them at scale, and make sure that it doesn't fall and like doesn't break and whatnot. And yeah, so I think this is what you want to help. Basically, you want to a little bit, maybe like if you're a big organization, you want some kind of a strategic direction. Then you probably need some more, maybe like a product planning or infrastructure plan, transition planning and something. And then you need like a long-term support, like if something if you have questions or something goes wrong or whatever.
So if there are any questions unanswered, I know that we have just touched upon the surface and we might want to record a separate episode on like privacy, security, compliance and all, but I know that your team might answer all of these questions if they appear, and people can just reach out, provide their case, and they will be helped, right?
Yeah, like the next event will be like Abu Dhabi Financial Week. Think we have a booth there, like Gateway FM, and then we can of course talk a little bit about any specific case. Otherwise, I think gateway.fm is the website, and you can find a way to contact us. We are usually very responsive, either through a chat or like drop us an email or something, and then we can figure this thing out.
And your knowledge on different levels of the stack, does it include also, like, do you provide more or less a support with running your own chain, or do you also have, do you also can guide into L2 techs such as Polygon or Ethereum itself? Like, how does that work?
What we're focusing on is on provisioning L2s more than, and L2 is in a blockchain, but just it's much more efficient and still secure. So that's where we are standing.
If anybody wants to try it out, I know that there's a way to do it on the Gateway website straight away if it's for SMEs or anything like that. And also, don't hesitate to talk to guys because they know a lot. Being core contributors to both Polygon and Ethereum, this is just the best place to be and understand that. Or again, talk to them in a booth on Abu Dhabi Financial Week. ADFW.
ADFW, yeah. But also I wanted to say that's probably one more important thing, that we are kind of doing the solution end to end and basically in house, of course with partnership but whatnot. But we can, again, we know from how to run servers to like how to build your blockchain, like in a protocol level, to how to provision it, to even like on top of that we have so-called blueprints, is this, as I told, this building blocks that can help you with I don't know, Visa or MasterCard integration, or some exchanges, or like carbon credits, or gamify, or other things, or yeah, even KYC and whatnot. So that's important.
For somebody listening and thinking it's just a fad, could it be just a fad? Like, this is just a temporary trend, it's gonna go away, and people will keep on building on the stacks that are currently there with slight improvements and so on and so forth. Could it be just temporary thing?
No, like I think like it's good in so many places, again, where you can find the real value of it. Again, just savings in real money in team costs and whatnot. So I think, like, of course, about every technology, you can think about every technology that's okay. Or maybe mobile versions of the websites were just a fad, or mobile apps, like nobody needs a mobile app, maybe just go away. And then right now you see that the most banking and fintech is mobile first, right? So I think it's the same story. Of course, there's a lot of hype, but I think like in 2024, 2025, this thing, the hype cools down a little bit, or cooled down for a few years before. So, and now the real work starts, when the real adoption starts, because usually you see this kind of innovation curve. So people are first like very cautious, then the early adopters, then it's overhyped, and then it slowly goes down, then it goes even down again, because again everybody is disappointed because on the hype there was something bursts, Like people lose money, it goes down, and then after that, real adoption starts, and maybe in 5 to 10 years you will use blockchain and you will not even know that, or it's gonna be just boring and standard.
Thanks. Great insightful conversation. For everybody, I highly encourage to reach out to the team. Go to the website, check it on your own. Maybe you want to deploy your own DevNet and see how it works. If knowledge is not sufficient for you to run it through, talk to guys, because they are the best in the field, especially when it comes to secure systems like ZK-based ones. And we'll run your ad after this, just to inspire people a little bit more. Any closing words?
This technology, again, it's already, a lot of people are already using it. Like it's a lot of on the big enterprises, including the finances. You just don't hear about it because they all under the closed doors. But I would say that don't sleep while your competitor is doing that already.
At least you can do a POC and see everything for yourself. Cool. Thanks very much.
For every on-chain project, we've built a smart engine which fits any use case, offers bank-grade ZK security, handling over 100 million daily transactions with 10 times storage savings, 240 times faster sync time, with all the tools necessary included, with only 3 clicks to set up, all while costs fade into the distance. It's Presto by Gateway.